Hello, everybody. Welcome to Gossip Finance. I'm Duncan Sandlin. So, Stormy Daniels set to testify today in the Trump trials. We'll see how that goes. It's not going to be good, but let's jump into Fox because they seem to skip a lot of the point here of what this testimony is really going to be about.
In just over an hour, former President Donald Trump is set to be back in a New York City courtroom as we hit day 13 of his ongoing criminal trial. And an attorney for Stormy Daniels says the actress is expected to appear as a witness in Trump's hush money trial today. Stormy is going to show up.
Yeah, they're out of big names. This is one of the biggest. Eric Shawn is live outside the courthouse with what we can expect today. Follow the COO with someone a little bit more exciting.
Brian and Steve, Stormy on the stand. That's what the AP has been reporting, just breaking a few moments ago, that the next witness in the Trump trial will be Stormy Daniels. She is expected to testify, of course, about getting paid off, according to her claim, by Michael Cohen to keep her alleged affair with the former president secret so that it would not affect the 2016 presidential election. And Mr. Trump's presidential candidacy would not be hurt if the allegations of that affair, that alleged one-night stand, was made public before the election.
Oh, but it's so much more. I hate the way he puts that. Alleged affair, alleged one-night stand. Because here's what happened earlier. The attorney, Keith Davidson, who represented Karen McDougal, who was the Playmate model that Trump had the affair with, but that was an actual affair. They were together 10 months. She said she was in love with him, that she thought he was in love with her. It was an actual relationship. When it came to Stormy's situation, and they asked Keith Davidson about that, he had actually forged a letter and signed Stormy's name, stating that they didn't have I can't remember if the word was intimate sexual relationship, I think it was. And the prosecutors had to press him on that. Well, what do you mean by intimate sexual relationship? Well, they didn't have an intimate sexual relationship. So they didn't have a sexual relationship? Well, they didn't have an intimate sexual. Well, what's the difference? And when they finally got it down, it took them a while to drill down. You finally got to, okay, they had sex, right? It just wasn't a relationship. It wasn't intimate. It was just a sexual encounter. It wasn't an affair, one-night stand. That's one way to put it. Now, if you've looked at what Stormy's been saying about it, and she's been very consistent on her story, she tells a completely different story about what that actually means. And I'm going to get into that right now because this is a little bit different. This is her on The View, and we're going to watch a few minutes of this because I think the way she's handled this is really, really, really well. For as horrific about what she's about to say is, because she doesn't describe it as consensual sex. So it's a whole different take on this than what they're trying to spin it as.
Yes, Stormy, Trump and his legal team have been trying to block you, actually, from appearing at his upcoming hush money trial in New York. He has denied all wrongdoing, of course, but the judge overseeing it just ruled that you and former fixer Michael Cohen are allowed to testify in the case. Are you ready to take the stand against Donald Trump? And I don't want you to talk about what you're going to say or anything about the trial. That's my lawyer hat on. But are you ready?
I'm absolutely ready. I've been ready. I'm hoping with all of my heart that they call me because, as I showed on the stand against Michael Avenatti, I don't need someone to speak for me. Mm-hmm. And I relish the day that I get to face him and speak my truth.
Well, Stormy, I want to go back a little bit. We see this in the documentary, or we hear about it, sorry, to the original sexual encounter you say you had with Trump in 2006. Now, you've always called it consensual,
yes,
but in the documentary, you elaborate that you felt misled and cornered by him, and that you feel partially responsible for the women who may have come after you.
Yeah, I am so glad that you asked that question because I have a very, no offense to Sarah, who I guess is sort of a journalist. It's journalists are the bane of my existence, but also, so it's, they've given me this opportunity. It's clickbait, everybody, it's clickbait. If I see the word bombshell one more time, I'm gonna become a bombshell.
So in the past she has said that it was consensual, but how her interpretation of it versus what she's described is very, very different. So we're going to get into how she's described it and what's going on with that.
I came out of the bathroom. What do you call it when you come out of a bathroom as a lady and you're not expecting someone to be there, and in front of you is a man in his underwear between you and the door, and you go around and he stands there? What is that called? Blocking, cornering, like
Intimidation.
Yeah. Intimidation.
And a very powerful man.
Right, but that story has not changed. It's, you know, I didn't just suddenly remember this or just suddenly add details.
Yeah.
It's the same story. It's just that this in the documentary, hearing it and seeing it, I think a lot of people it really hit home, and also a lot of people didn't read the book. I wrote the book because I wanted to get my story out, and then I realized a lot of people don't read. So
Yeah.
I should have made like a picture book. No, I shouldn't have.
Please no.
But yeah, so the story hasn't changed.
Yeah.
I just remember a little more, but I did remember a few more things that had nothing to do with the sexual encounter. Like that's the sexual act. I'm trying to think of a very nice word to say that, so I don't get in trouble with the nice man with the microphone again. Those details are burned into my soul forever.
Yeah.
I did remember a little more of the words that he said to me, because originally I didn't know that they were that important because they weren't direct threats. It wasn't like, you are going to have sex with me or I'm going to murder you.
Right.
Or like, don't scream, bad word.
Yeah.
Have you said this before?
Yes.
Okay.
It was more like, I thought you wanted to be I thought you wanted to be successful. You have to show me what it takes. It was that kind of thing. And I didn't really realize the gravity of that until I watched the movie, here I'm gonna say the word again, Bombshell. In this case, it's valid.
Movie about Fox and
and you have to remember that Trump was more than twice my age. Like I thought he was like a father, because I was closer to his daughter's age.
Yeah.
And he, so.
He also said you were.
So I wanted to stop there because that's really interesting. Because so the encounter, as she describes it, she meets with him. There's some talk about, I guess, her being on The Apprentice or something. She's in her hotel room. She comes out of the shower. He's in the room. So he's broken into the room, and he's basically in his underwear. Not letting her leave, and telling her, "Well, you said you want to be famous. You got to show me." Right. So what she's basically describing is rape, and that's not something it's not something we're arguing about here, really. This is how it is. I just want to look up this just to show you what I'm talking about. So this is RAINN. This is the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. So they help victims, especially of assault and abuse. So they talk about what is sexual assault. The term sexual assault refers to sexual contact or behavior that occurs without explicit consent of the victim. Okay? And then they give a list of it. So they talk, what is rape? Rape is a form of sexual assault, but not all sexual assault is rape. The term rape, often used as a legal definition, to specifically include sexual penetration without consent. For its uniform crime reports, the FBI defines rape as penetration, no matter how slight, of the vagina or anus with any body part or object, or oral penetration by a sex organ of another person without the consent of the victim. And then they ask, okay, well, what is force? Because this is the second point of this. So it's some sort of non-consensual, but you had to be sort of forced or coerced into it. So force doesn't always refer to physical pressure. Perpetrators may use emotional coercion, psychological force, or manipulation to coerce a victim into non-consensual sex. Some perpetrators will use threats to force a victim to comply, such as threatening to hurt the victim or family, blah, blah, blah. In this case, the threat was it would damage her career, or he wouldn't help her out with her career, so there's a coercive factor here to try and force her into consenting. And I don't know if you remember the Access Hollywood tape when he did the whole bit about, they let him do anything, they let you grab him by the pussy. The thing that's interesting about that statement, and what was so horrific at the time when it came out, was he's not saying they want you to do it or these women desire me. He's saying they let me do it. That was what was so horrific. He's describing sexual assault. It's the way he said the word let. They let me do it because why? Because they really want you, or because they're afraid of what you'll do to them if they don't. That was what was so horrible. Is so when you talk about how this was affecting the election, because that's what this really is about. He paid off McDougal, he paid off Daniels, the doorman issue, which turned out to be kind of a nothing issue, but he still paid him off, which was illegal. And they did that because the Access Hollywood tape had come out, and he was tanking in the polls, and it looked like he was going to lose the election. So they needed to cover all this up, because one more of these would have really trashed it. Right? He'd have been in deep shit. That whole locker room talk thing wouldn't have floated anymore, because we'd have known it was real, that he really was a sexual assaulter of women. And that's not me saying that. He's already been found, liable for raping E. Jean Carroll. So a jury's already found that he's committed rape. This is not me making shit up. So when Stormy's describing this, and I can feel all the MAGA chuds out there wanting to argue with this on this point, what she's describing is sexual penetration with coercion, right? Without her tacit consent. So she is describing rape. She might not understand it that way. She might think to herself maybe it was consensual. Doesn't matter. What she's describing is rape. And that would be an interesting thing to come out in court. And if I were the prosecutor, I would hammer that home. Because, and I know you're thinking, well, what does this have to do with this case? He's not on trial for rape. He's on trial for paying them off to commit election interference, to hide that from the election. Why is that important? Well, it's important because it goes to the motive of why he did this and why it was so important, right? The Karen McDougal thing, that would have been bad. The doorman thing, that would have been bad. But this would have been devastating with Stormy, because she would have gotten up and basically described being raped. And he knew that. He knew that that's what he did. And if that came out along with him basically saying that he sexually assaults women, and then here's an example of a woman he sexually assaulted, now we're in deep shit, right? And once again, did he do it to Stormy? I don't know. He hasn't been found guilty of anything. He hasn't been found liable of anything. But we know he's raped before. We know that with E. Jean Carroll. A jury has found that. That is just a matter of fact. So I think that's interesting. But then it goes to the bigger point of the story. I want to go back to Fox real quick, because they go to this whole thing where they go to him talking for fucking 5 minutes. But then they finally get to what happened in court. And it's interesting because then they skip right past it when you get back to the panel on Fox and Friends. But this is really interesting because this is where it all leads back to proving the case, which is, I think they've pretty much proven at this point. But this is like final nails in the coffin time with Stormy and Michael Cohen.
Saw the checks that Trump signed, $35,000 each, prosecutors say, to reimburse Cohen for paying off Stormy. Former Trump Organization controller Jeffrey McConney admitted that he was told by the Trump CFO Alan Wasserberg that the checks were meant to reimburse Cohen. Jurors then saw a note that McConney scribbled on Trump letterhead saying he had to double the payout so Cohen could cover the taxes.
So this is how they figured out how much to pay back Cohen for his loss in tax and interest and all that stuff for the payments. So Cohen basically, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention or not. Cohen, what happened was initially Michael Pecker with the National Enquirer, right, American Media, whatever it was, he bought the Karen McDougal one. He did the other one with the doorman. When the Stormy one came up, he said, you know what, I've done this twice. I haven't been paid back. I'm not your bank. I can't do this anymore. And this one was just too much. So it got dumped onto Cohen to take care of this by Trump. And that's what's being argued now. And Cohen's going to say it, and that's pretty much what everybody else is saying, is Cohen wouldn't have done this without Trump. And then what Cohen did was to cover this whole thing up, he created a shell company, and to fund the payout to Stormy Daniels, Cohen took a home equity loan on his house, on his personal house, to get the money. And they took that money, and he paid off Stormy, and then Trump paid him back. And this was the note explaining how they were going to pay him back the $130, plus his taxes, plus his bonus, plus, his interest. So that's how Cohen got paid back, and he got paid back in a series of checks at $35,000 apiece, all signed by Trump, and they marked them as legal fees, when really it was for election interference. And that's the crime, is they committed the business fraud with the election interference. That makes it a major felony. And that's what is being established here. Now, the big thing about it being established for the election interference is they have to establish that he's doing that specifically for the election interference. right? So, I mean, you could be arguing, well, it's, I'm doing it to cover up for Melania and my marriage, except for the fact that he tried to delay paying Stormy until after the election. And then Keith Davidson, who was her attorney at the time, pressured them to get it done before that, or Stormy was going to go public, or he was going to press Stormy to go public, because after the election, there's no reason for him to pay her off, because he didn't care if it came out after the election that he raped, because he'd have won already. And so he could avoid paying her off. So that's the whole thing. So this all ties back. But the fact that it's a rape situation makes it so much more intense, because now he really has to hide it before the election. Because if that comes out right before the election, that this woman's saying he raped her, and it's a very believable story that she's telling, and she can certainly establish that she met him and all that stuff. She can describe his genitals in detail. She has. I mean, it's pretty damning. So, anyway, I love how Fox kind of just skips past a lot of this stuff. It just kind of amazes me. I mean, the guy wraps it up, and then they go back to the panel, and this is it. This is how they end this segment. It's just amazing to me.
Back to you.
Indeed. All right. Thank you very much, Eric. I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
That's it. Thank you very much, Eric. And then they moved on to the next story. So, anyway, we'll see what happens today. I'd be shocked if they don't bring it up. And I'd be shocked if they don't mention the term rape or sexual assault or non-consensual. It doesn't come up. But yeah, I think that's gonna basically, I mean, everybody's already said he had the motive to do it. And that was the motive. He didn't really care what Melania thought or what she knew. I bet you Melania knew he was having affairs, but she didn't care. But everybody basically said that. Pecker said that. The COO said that. But yeah, it's basically they're going to do her, Cohen, then they're probably going to round out with a couple more people to really hammer home that this is what happened. But I don't know how you come back without a guilty verdict. The only way he skates now is if there happens to be one or two jurors that are just big rah-rah Trump supporters who, hang the jury. But that's the best he can hope for now, is a hung jury, and in which case they'll probably move and retry the case probably pretty quickly. So we'll see how it all plays out, but all bets being taken on does the sexual assault rape word come up in the Stormy testimony. We'll see. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you have a great day.